Between the rise in cowboy action shooting, modernized lever builds, and a new wave of shooters looking for something cooler than a bolt gun, demand is through the roof. And where there's demand, you can bet there's hype. Problem is, a lot of the rifles getting sold today, or resurrected from pawn shops, simply don't live up to their reputation. Some suffer from bad timing, literally. Others were part of the dreaded Remington-era quality slump, while a few are just outdated designs that never evolved. And don't get me started on the budget-friendly imports with actions so gritty they sound like you're filing down concrete. Whether you're looking for a brush gun, a ranch rifle, or just something to flex at the range, you deserve a lever gun that works when it matters. This list isn't about hating on history. It's about calling out the lemons, the misfires, and the overpromised underperformers. Let's get into it. All right, let's talk about the Puma M92. Specifically those older, pre-Brastec imports from the 80s and 90s. On paper, this thing sounds like a dream. It's a Winchester 1892 clone chambered in classic calibers like .357 Magnum and .44 Magnum, often found for way less than a real Winchester. Light, fast handling, and cowboy cool. What's not to love? Well, just wait until you try cycling one. The action feels like it's packed with gravel. The internals? Rough machined and inconsistent. Early Pumas were notorious for feeding issues, especially with hollow points or any non-round nose ammo. The extractors were hit or miss, some too tight, some too loose, and let's not even start on the sharp-edged loading gates that'll shred your thumb faster than your last trip to the junkyard. Sure, some folks smooth them out with action jobs, new springs, and lots of patience. But if you've got to tear a rifle apart and polish half the internals just to make it functional, that's not a good sign. It's a project, not a shooter. Later versions made under Rossi's full control cleaned up a lot of these issues. But those early Pumas, they're more of a warning label than a recommendation. So, unless you're into DIY gunsmithing or just want a cool piece to hang on the wall, steer clear of these old-school Pumas. They might look the part, but in the reliability department, they come up short, and that's being generous. Now here's a case of cool idea, bad execution. The Henry .410 lever-action shotgun had the makings of something slick, a lever-action scattergun that brings Old West flair to ranch work or home defense. I mean, a lever-action .410? That's a conversation starter. But once you actually run this thing, the novelty wears off fast, and the problems start showing up faster. First off, the ergonomics are just off. That tubular magazine is slow to load, especially under pressure, and the shell gate feels more stubborn than a rusty hinge. Feeding can be finicky, especially with certain loads. And don't be surprised if you're fighting weak ejection or stovepipes. That might fly on a cheap plinker, but not on something you might actually depend on for pest control or bedside duty. Then there's the recoil. Yes, even from a .410. It's not punishing, but it feels awkward in a platform that wasn't really built for shotgunning. Accuracy? Meh. Barrel options and choke control are limited, making it a niche tool at best. Henry's build quality is usually solid, but this model comes off more like a marketing flex than a serious firearm. It's fun for a range day once in a while. And yeah, it looks cool. But if you're thinking about this as a working gun, think again. There are better ways to spend your money, and much better ways to run a shotgun. Leave this one in the fantasy section. Samaran's known for making beautiful cowboy guns. They've got that old-school aesthetic down to an art form. And the Samaran 1873 short rifle? It looks like it just galloped in from a spaghetti western. Brass accents, smooth lines, and that iconic lever-action silhouette. But once you get past the looks, things start to get finicky. The toggle link action on this gun is a classic design, but it's delicate. The timing has to be perfect, or you'll run into feeding and extraction problems faster than you can say draw. And Samaran's execution? Not great. A lot of owners report weak or inconsistent extractors, soft internals that wear quickly, and springs that feel like they were pulled from a dollar store stapler. Add insensitivity to ammo, particularly flat-nosed bullets, and you've got a rifle that's more temperamental than a stagecoach full of outlaws. What's worse is the price. These things ain't cheap. You're paying a premium for that authentic look and feel, but you're not necessarily getting premium performance. If you're doing cowboy action shooting and want a flashy safe queen, sure, this might be your jam. But if you want something dependable for regular range time or serious use, you'll spend more time fixing this rifle than firing it. Samaran nailed the vibe, but missed the mark on function. It's a show pony, not a workhorse. And when it comes to lever guns, you need something that runs, not just looks the part. The Chiapa 1886 should be a powerhouse. It's a big, beefy lever-action rifle chambered in 45-70 government, a round that's basically the freight train of cowboy calibers. With that classic 1886 profile and modern manufacturing, you'd think Chiapa had built a lever gun ready to dominate both the backwoods and the range. But then you shoot one, and it all starts to unravel. Fit and finish? Inconsistent. Some rifles come out of the box looking great. Others look like they were assembled during an espresso break. The internals are where things really go south. Reports of soft metal parts wearing down prematurely, screws backing out after a handful of rounds, and timing issues that can cause feeding or extraction failures aren't uncommon. One guy even told me his rear sight sheared off mid-session. Just fell right off. Chiapa's biggest sin? Inconsistency. One rifle might run smooth as silk, while the next is a clunky, jam-prone mess. When you're spending close to $2,000, that's not a gamble you should have to take. And if something breaks, good luck. Parts availability is sketchy, and getting support from Chiapa can be like trying to lasso a ghost. So, while the Chiapa 1886 might turn heads with its big bore boom and vintage appeal, it falls flat where it matters most: reliability and build quality. If you want a 45-70 lever gun that won't give you gray hairs, look elsewhere. This one's more bark than bite. On paper, it sounds like a genius move. Take one of the most iconic lever guns ever made, tweak the design so you can finally mount a scope without interference, and boom, modern cowboy perfection, right? Not quite. The AE in this case stands for angle eject, and while it solved one problem, it introduced a whole new batch of them. Let's start with the action. The original 94 had a buttery, time-tested lever feel. The AE version? Not so much. The redesigned receiver changed the geometry, and a lot of shooters say it feels clunkier and less fluid. Some models even had trouble feeding smoothly, especially if you tried running different bullet profiles. Add in reports of spotty machining during certain production runs, particularly in the 90s, and you've got yourself a lever gun that might or might not run clean. Scope mounting was the whole point of this redesign, but it didn't always live up to the hype. Depending on the base and optic, shell ejection could still be unpredictable. And when your rifle chucks brass into your scope bell or jams while trying, it kinda kills the dream. The 94 AE tried to modernize a classic, but ended up messing with the magic. Not all of them are lemons, but the hit-or-miss reputation is enough to warrant caution. If you're eyeing one, make sure you know exactly what production year you're dealing with, or you might end up regretting it at the range. The Marlin 336 is one of the most beloved lever guns of all time, rugged, reliable, and built to take game season after season. But then came the dark days. When Remington acquired Marlin in 2007, things went sideways fast. Enter the dreaded Remington-era, a stretch of time where the 336 became almost unrecognizable in terms of quality. We're talking mismatched wood and metal, rough machine work, misaligned barrels, and actions so gritty they felt like they'd been lubed with beach sand. Sight alignment was a joke, feeding was erratic, and worst of all, the rifles were still selling under the legendary Marlin name. Longtime fans were left shaking their heads, and many buyers had no idea they were getting a rifle made in the oops years. Now, to be fair, not every Remlin is a total disaster. A few slipped through the cracks and worked just fine, but the inconsistency was shocking from a brand that used to set the standard. You could buy two rifles off the same shelf, and one would run great, while the other wouldn't chamber around to save its life. Since Ruger took over the Marlin line, things have improved dramatically. But these older Remington-made 336s are still floating around pawn shops, online auctions, and dusty backrooms. If you're looking at one, check the serial number and do your homework. Because if you end up with one of the bad ones, It won't just be unreliable, it'll ruin your trust in an American classic. If you've never heard of the Winchester Model 88, there's a reason. It was a weird attempt to modernize the lever gun, and it didn't exactly stick the landing. Winchester tried to bridge the gap between lever action cool and bolt action performance with this rifle. On the surface, it looked slick. Detachable box magazine, rotating bolt, chambered in 308 and 243. Sounds like the best of both worlds, right? Wrong. The Model 88 ended up being a mechanical headache. That rotating bolt? Cool in theory, until something breaks, and it will. When it does, good luck finding replacement parts. Most gunsmiths will either laugh or cry if you bring one in. The trigger feels like it was stolen from a staple gun, and the action is stiffer than a stubborn mule. Feeding and extraction aren't always smooth either. It's not that the gun's totally non-functional, it's just overly complicated for what it's trying to be. Collectors might grab one out of nostalgia, but practical shooters? You'll spend more time diagnosing problems than pulling the trigger. And maintenance? It's got more moving parts than a Swiss watch and about the same tolerance for dirt. The Model 88 was Winchester trying to be something it wasn't, and it shows. If you want a lever gun that shoots like a bolt gun, just buy a bolt gun. If you want a classic lever, stick with something simpler. The Model 88 ends up being neither fish nor fowl, just frustrating. Now, before anyone grabs their torches and pitchforks, yes, I know the Winchester Model 1873 is the gun that won the West. It's iconic. It's beautiful. It's a piece of American firearms history. But let's get something straight. Just because it was revolutionary in 1873 doesn't mean it holds up in 2025. The 1873 runs on a toggle link action, which was innovative at the time, and also incredibly delicate by today's standards. It's the kind of design that works great in a museum, or with powder puff cowboy loads. But if you push it too hard or expect it to cycle anything modern with authority, you're going to have a bad time. Timing is everything with these guns. Get even slightly out of spec, and suddenly you've got misfeeds, failure to extract, or worse, broken parts. It's like trying to race a Model T in modern traffic. Even high-end reproductions, from Uberti or Winchester themselves, aren't immune. The action's just inherently limited. Want to scope it? Good luck. Want to run defensive ammo? Better cross your fingers. These guns are beautiful wall hangers. Fun for cowboy action if tuned right. But asking them to be a serious, reliable workhorse in today's world? That's a no from me. Partner. The 1873 is a legend, no doubt. But legends belong in books, or in glass cases. If you want something dependable that'll run under pressure, this ain't it. The Marlin 1894 should be a fan favorite. It's compact, quick handling, and chambered in revolver rounds like .357 Magnum and .44 Mag, perfect for ranch carry, truck duty, or some good old lever fun. It's got that classic cowboy vibe with just enough modern punch to stay relevant. So why is it sitting this high on a worst of list? Two ugly words, Remington-era. When Remington took over production, the 1894 went from reliable brush gun to malfunction machine. Guns came off the line with misaligned barrels, crooked sights, tool marks that looked like a shop-class project gone wrong, and actions that felt like they'd been assembled with a sledgehammer. Feeding issues were rampant. Cycling could be rough, inconsistent, or just plain stuck. Some shooters couldn't make it through a full magazine without a jam. That's not just annoying. That's unusable. Now, to be fair, the new Ruger-made Marlins are a huge improvement. Quality is back, and the 1894 is finally living up to its potential again. But if you're buying used or shopping on the cheap, beware. Those older Remlin rifles are still out there, and they can ruin the reputation of what should be a rock-solid lever gun. The Marlin 1894 has the bones of a classic, but thanks to a few dark years in production, it's a coin toss unless you know exactly what you're buying. Don't let the name fool you. It's not always a safe bet. The Henry Long Ranger sounds like the future of lever guns. Detachable box magazine, solid side ejection, and chambered in real rifle rounds like .223, .243, and .308. Basically, Henry took the classic cowboy rifle and tried to cram it full of bolt-action DNA. Ambitious? For sure. But unfortunately, This modern hybrid ends up doing a little bit of everything, and none of it all that well. The biggest issue? Feeding and extraction. It's picky about ammo, and magazine fit can be hit or miss. Some users report rounds hanging up on the feed ramp or failing to eject cleanly. That's not just annoying. That's deal-breaking if you're out in the field. Add in the fact that the magazines aren't exactly cheap or easy to find, and you've got a modern rifle with reliability quirks that feel anything but modern. The action itself isn't bad. It's smooth enough, but it lacks that solid mechanical confidence you get from traditional lever designs. It feels more like a prototype than a perfected platform. And while Henry usually nails their finish and woodwork, even that's not enough to save the Long Ranger from its performance inconsistencies. It's not the worst gun ever made, not even close. But for something marketed as the next-gen lever rifle, it's a letdown. If you want bolt-action precision, buy a bolt gun. If you want lever-action soul, stick to a classic. The Long Ranger ends up stuck in the middle, trying to be both, and nailing neither. At first glance, the Marlin 338 MXLR looks like a lever gun lover's dream. Stainless steel finish, laminated stock, and chambered in the powerful 338 Marlin Express, a round that was supposed to deliver 30-06 ballistics from a lever-action platform. It was hyped as the ultimate long-range lever gun. Keyword was. Let's start with the round itself. 338 Marlin Express sounded good in theory, but in reality, it never took off. Ammo is scarce and pricey, and most big-name manufacturers have abandoned it entirely. If you find a box, you better guard it like gold. That limited ammo supply makes the gun more of a collector's oddity than a serious hunting tool. Then there's the rifle. The MXLR came out during the Remington takeover, so you guessed it. Marlin quality issues again, misaligned scopes, rough actions, and inconsistent accuracy plagued what was supposed to be a premium model. Some rifles shot great, others couldn't hold a group to save their life. Even if you get a good one, you're still shackled to a cartridge with a shaky future. Parts aren't easy to find. Aftermarket support is thin. And if anything goes wrong, you're looking at a paperweight with a really nice finish. The MXLR tried to reinvent the lever-action rifle for long-range hunters, but instead of starting a new trend, it stumbled into extinction. Looks cool. Shoots okay, maybe. But in 2025, it's a risky buy at best. Let's be honest. The Rossi R92 should be a winner. It's affordable, comes in fun calibers like .357 Magnum and .44 Mag, and it's basically a clone of the legendary Winchester 1892. On paper, this thing looks like the ultimate budget lever gun. But in the real world, it's a roll of the dice, and more often than not, you lose. The biggest problem with the R92 is wild inconsistency. Some folks get lucky and snag a decent shooter. The rest end up with a rifle that cycles like it's chewing gravel. Feeding issues, misfires, sharp edges, loose tolerances, you name it. Actions are stiff out of the box, often needing a full teardown and polish just to function smoothly. That might be a fun weekend project for a gunsmith. But for the average shooter, it's a headache wrapped in blued steel. Even the finish is hit or miss. Wood stocks can look like they were sanded with a rock, and metalwork isn't exactly what you'd call refined. Want to mount a peep sight or optic? Better break out the drill press, because factory mounting options are basically non-existent. Yes, it's cheap, but that price tag comes with compromises. If you're handy, patient, and love tuning guns, you might make the R92 sing, but for everyone else, it's more jam session than six-shooter. For a gun that's supposed to be a working-class lever legend, the Rossi R92 just doesn't deliver, and that's why it takes the top spot on this list. And there you have it, 12 lever-action rifles that look good in the rack but can leave you swearing at the bench. From classic legends that haven't aged well to modern flops that promised innovation but delivered frustration, these guns all share one thing. They're more trouble than they're worth. In a world where reliability matters more than ever, especially with rising prices and limited ammo, make sure you know what you're getting into before you pull the trigger. Literally. Drop your own lever gun horror stories down in the comments. I know you've got one. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share this with a buddy who's eyeing a lemon. Stay sharp, stay safe. Until next time, lock and load, end.